Hello and welcome back to Far Beyond the World. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is right after um, Ranok returned and you had the whole little nice dinner, but things were a little bit off, and we're gonna find out why right now. And we met Regara, who's about to tell us the story of what happened those 2 weeks when they were missing. And yeah, so without further ado, let's continue the story. At first, it seemed like nothing. Disturbed forest floor, and broken foliage. I assumed that it were perhaps poachers encroaching on our territory. Nothing major. I mean, it happened before. The female shrugs, and the gathered nod in agreement. We followed the tracks for a bit, only to find that the party was much larger than initially anticipated. Maybe 10 or 15 individual set of tracks. If this was the case, why didn't you retreat to one of the outer packs? Dran interrupts her, and the female looks at him with surprise. Because there were 14 of us there. I knew Dalaran was nearby, and if they were intruders, I would rather not leave them uncontested. So you regrouped then? The chief guesses, but the female shakes her head. No, because we even had a chance to change course. I saw a massive cloud rise above the treetops. She points towards the forest surrounding the grounds, and made me look in that direction. It was the thickest smoke I've ever seen, a column of ash and soot 300 feet tall. Hearing this, the gathered begin murmuring between each other, clearly unsettled by the revelation. I knew that wherever Dalaran was, he would have seen it too, so we set our course, hoping that the other pack would converge on us there. Good call. Vithrir nods in approval, while Regara takes a deep gulp of wine. Her eyes venture to the earth beneath her paw, and her jaw shivers a little as she struggles to recount the tale. I was prepared to see what happened there. The intruders put an entire Lapin burrow to torch and sword. They took the young ones and butchered everyone else, including the livestock, while setting fire to everything around. This caused an outrage among the gathered, with many howling and screaming in anger, while the chief and Vithrir exchanged troubled gazes. I myself find my worried eyes venture to Ranok, and the wolf tries to give me an encouraging smile, but I can see it's just a front. You're all right to be outraged. So were we. She drowns the last contents of her cup and brings it back to Vol, who refills it without delay. We were outraged. We wanted vengeance. We wanted to pursue and catch whoever committed this atrocity. But if the fires were left unchecked, they would have spread. The bastards who started them did so on purpose, knowing full well we'd be tied down trying to stop the inferno. Burrow? Which? Please. I noticed Trist approach the table, toying nervously with his fingers, and I could see he's struggling to contain tears. My heart goes out to him, and I keep repeating to myself, please don't let it be his home. Tai Napkrop. Regara responds with a wavering voice, and an audible sigh of relief escapes the brown rabbit's lips. Don't worry, Trist. Your family is safe. All your families are safe. She addresses the remaining bunnies only to continue with a hushed, sorrowful voice. Can't say the same for these poor sods. As she takes a shallow sip of wine, I close my eyes, giving thanks to whichever god has answered my prayer. Still, no one deserves such a fate, and despite the somewhat good news, most of the attendants are still understandably upset. Just as Trist told me a few days back, his people are always the one to get hit by anything those wolves do. Who gives a rat's ass about the damn rabbits? Dran spits out with annoyance. Tell us what happened to my son! Wait, his son? Dalaran arrived within a few hours of us. He was equally shaken by the devastation and rushed to our aid. Despite our joint efforts, it was clear that the fires wouldn't be taken out for a long while, giving the perpetrators enough time to escape with our people in chains. Again, the female is forced to take another sip. I can't believe she was able to maintain such good humor at the table despite carrying such horrors within. A village of wolves in masks. It's clear, though, that recounting the tale makes her crack, almost as if she was reliving it anew. "This wouldn't stand. Not with us. Dalaran and I knew that one of us would have to stay and stop the fires, but neither was willing to forego the privilege of bringing the bandits to justice. So we gambled for it." She shrugs casually, causing some to chuckle. "Dalaran, lucky git he is. Juan and his pack immediately left." "And you just let him?" Dran sounds completely outraged, but the female doesn't budge. "Believe me, it gave me no joy playing the forest ranger while he went off to battle, but our duty is both to the people and the land was bleeding. Unless we wanted a carbon makeover of our northern reaches, there was no other choice." Regara states sternly, and despite Dran's intense protests, most of the gathered seem to agree with the female. "As we continued our struggle to contain the flames, we found one survivor among the wreckage. It was a deerkin, a young druid badly wounded. We managed to patch him up. As thanks, he offered up his services in bringing the criminals to justice. He claimed that he could commune with the forest and keep an eye on the other pack." She pokes her head playfully, rolling her eyes as some of the wolves snicker. I know. At first, I was skeptic as anyone would. I'd never seen any real magic in action, so I ignored him. I wish I was wiser. He knew those woods better than anyone could, found paths otherwise unseen by any rangers. So I began to listen, cautiously, but still." The female pauses, allowing the gather to settle down. "The following day, the trees told him that Dalaran reached his quarry, released the slaves, and killed the poachers. A fanciful tale, I thought, but one detail caught me off guard. The druid claimed that there were only 4 enemies killed, and that the forest warned of others at large. I already knew that there were at least 14, so it became clear it was a trap, and that the druid wasn't making it up. Sylvan magic! Rubbish! All of it!" Aldris scoffs in amusement, waving to one of the attendants to bring her wine. "My son would never kill another wolf," Dran added, waving as well, and waiting to be served in turn. I notice that his comment makes Ranok's lip curl up in a subdued snarl. "You weren't there!" The female responds raspidly through a taunting growl. "You haven't seen what I've seen, what those wolves have done. It was perverse, going against everything our people stand for. The way I see it, there weren't wolves at all, but rabid beasts needed to be put down." "How can you say such a thing about our kin?" Aldris shifts uncomfortably, contempt for Regara's words clear in her voice. "Because they were intent on carrying out those atrocities across the entire border unless stopped." "And how would you know that?" Dran challenges her, retrieving his goblet from Trist. "The tree spoke to the deer. They told him." "The trees again!" Aldris sneers with annoyance. "The trees don't speak, you gullible girl. The deer took you for a fool, you were." "Again!" Regara blinks, snarling and releasing an exasperated sigh. "You weren't there. He knew things that he could not have possibly known." "Like what?" "He knew of Ranok's coming of age, for one. Everyone invested in the tribe's politics would have known of Ranok's coming of age." The pudgy female raises a hand and slaps him against her knees. "He's one step away from being a damn prince, the way Varrock treats him." "He knew of the human as well," Regara adds, causing the others to whisper between themselves in confusion. In fact, with this one revelation, she seizes the attention of all the gathered. "He said the tree spoke of him incessantly, almost as if the sudden arrival has shaken the entire forest to its core. Why would the forest be speaking of this human?" "That I do not know," the female says in a defeated tone, taking another sip from her cup. "But if you need more proof, his constant warnings about incoming attacks were flawless. He predicted all enemy movements, and thanks to that, we were able to counter all ambushes." "Ambushes?" "As I said, Dalaran only caught 4 intruders, which meant that at least 10 of them were still at large. We repelled the first attack with ease, but it soon got clear that we were being tested." "Tested?" The chief finally pitches in. He was oddly quiet throughout the entire exchange, most likely taking in everything Regara was saying. Whatever they were doing, they did not try to kill us outright. At first, it almost seemed like a rather intense training regimen. They checked our alertness, our combat skills, and then disengaged. You think they were trying to get the measure of you? Vithri raises his brow. His face is oddly stoic, almost emotionless. That would be my guess, yes. Why did you allow that then? Dran chastises her in annoyance. Why didn't you pursue them once they ended their games? I won't be taking combat advice from Bearwulff who's never wielded a weapon in his life. Regara draws a collective gasp from the gathered, while Vithri goes as far as to chuckle. That's exactly what they were counting on. We were outnumbered and surrounded, strong only as a unit. The moment we disperse, they'd pick us off one by one. Well said. Again, Vithri agrees with her assessment, raising his cup in admiration, and the female thanks him with a gentle head bow. I had a good teacher, she mutters, drawing a proud smile from the brown male's muzzle. I had to stay firm, stand together. Seeing their tactics didn't work, the enemy tried to wear us out by depriving us from sleep. This was no lost hunting party. Those were seasoned warriors trying to kill us slowly, one by one, like stalked prey. Very much seems like it. The chief nods, calmly reaching for a clay bottle, and once he poured himself a tall glass of moonshine, I began to realize that this is quite serious. Worse yet, they were waiting for reinforcements. The druid told me that there was another party entering Turnen from the north, at least a dozen. He gave me no reason not to believe his words, so our situation was getting desperate. What more proof do we need? The chief spreads his arms and bangs the table. It's an invasion. An invasion? You've lost your mind. You're taking this girl's word for it. Based on a story spun by an otherkin nonetheless. The two elders continue their unbearable mockery. How can they do such a thing in the face of Regara's harrowing account? What am I thinking? Of course they can. They're massive cunts. Silevan folk are known for their deep connection to nature. It's where our own traditions take source. The name trees to name a few. Don't be absurd. Do you honestly believe a deer spoke with trees? She sneers, but this time it's Vithri who bangs the table in anger. I look to the male, who bares his fangs freely, entire fur standing up in barely contained rage. I speak with my soulmate's tree every night, thanks to you. Am I being absurd, woman? Oh, I dozed off again. Enel stirs from one of her stupors and blinks in the dim light of the candles. Considering the timing of those so far, I'm more and more convinced she does it on purpose. My, it has gotten incredibly chilly, she mutters, shivering, and I pull at Ranok's cape. The wolf looks at me confused, and I nod towards Enel. Realizing what I mean to do, he smiles at me approvingly and unpins the cloak from his pauldron. Once it's free, I fold it onto my arm and walk around the table with everyone looking at me with slight surprise as I drape the cloak around the elder's shoulders. My word, you're reading my mind, you lovely beastie. She smiles, pulling the cloak tighter around her shoulders while I pour her another glass of wine. Considering she might actually be cold, I also nod towards the moonshine bottle, and she smiles at me knowingly. Go on. Why not? She snickers teasingly, and I uncork the top, pouring a dash into her wine. Thank you ever so much. What a charming little fella. Perhaps you should be escorted back home, Enel. Vithri's anger has now completely melted away, and he looks to the female with genuine concern. No. It's quite all right now. Thank you. She waves her paw at him. I haven't felt this taken care of in quite some time. I'm loath to let it end so soon. The female turns to shake my arm in gratitude, and I smile, noticing Vithrir's approving nod. I realize what she's doing. Every time things begin to spiral, she diffuses the tension with a masterful precision. As I return to my place, the chief looks towards Regara, who took this little spat as an opportunity to have her cup refilled. She's going through those at an alarming pace, but at the same time, can I blame her? What she described so far sounds like a living hell. You were saying about the ambush and the incoming enemy reinforcements. Yes. The large female nods, trying to muster the courage to say what needed to be said. I was worried this would be our end, but thanks to the druid, we were able to counteract every move of the enemy. However, the time was running out. Infuriated that their ambushes kept failing, they eventually figured out that the deer was our eyes. One night, they decided to attack us in full force and in open battle. She dips her lips in the wine and takes a shallow huff of air. Again, I thought it was one of their tests, but this time, they fought until they fell. It was a gambit. They sacrificed 2 of their own so that they could get to the deer and deliver him a deadly blow. That's when I got this. Regara points to the scar on her forearm. And that's when Fran and Enya got wounded. Our only consolation was that we managed to kill 2 of those sons of bitches. Once their task was accomplished, they scattered into the woods like cowards. So you admit that you killed your fellow wolves? Dran speaks in an accusatory tone, as if seeking outrage from the gathered, but to his surprise, none share his sentiment. Fellow? They try to kill us! She did what any true wolf would do. She stood her ground and fought for her life. What happened next? Vithri urges her on, clearly intrigued by the events. As he was dying, the druid managed to give me one final warning. He revealed that help was on its way. He said Ranok left looking for us, and all I had to do was wait out 2 more nights. What? The chief utters in disbelief, almost sounding amazed by her words, while I looked to my wolf in confusion. We hunkered down, buried the deer as is custom for his kind, and waited. Waited to live, to fight, to die. Waited for Ranok to finally arrive. It was getting gruesome, although now fewer in numbers. They made up for it in ferocity. They were out for blood. Can you blame them? You've killed 2 of their own. At times, I do have to wonder whose side you're on. The male issues a subdued growl, to which Aldris only scoffs. On the side of reason! Let her finish her account, for crying out loud! Vithri bangs the table once more, and his patience is clearly wearing thin. Continue, please, and pay them no mind. By the dawn of the 3rd day, we were on our last legs. We would have all perished had Ranok not arrived when he did, right amid their final assault. I can barely contain tears from creeping onto my eyes. Had we not argued? Had we not had our heart-to-heart? He might have not left. It's hard to understand that life of so many hinged on something seemingly so unrelated. Immediately, I venture to Varissa's words about fate. But before I can allow my emotions to spiral, Regara casts her gaze in our direction. Her muzzle beams with pride as she looks to Ranok with utter devotion. You should have seen him! He descended onto the enemy like the great wolf spirit himself. No hesitation. No fear. He cuts down 2 of those fuckers with one fell swoop, inspiring the rest of us to bring out what fighting spirit was left in our body. It was glorious. We fought like we never fought in our lives. My breath becomes heavy and I continually blink away the tears, trying not to look at Ranok, as pretty much every eye was now fixated on him. I could see his father's proud expression as Regara delivers her testimony, and I share in his awe, but Ranok's oddly uncomfortable. If not for him, I wouldn't be here. None of us would have returned. She raises her cup and everyone does the same, standing to their feet. Since it's not really a verbal cue, I am free to do the same and everyone cheers in one single voice. To Ranok! It's clear the Grey Wolf does not know how to take this. He seems embarrassed by the unanimous display of admiration. But if what Regara says is true, he deserves it, and so much more. In fact, it makes me feel quite embarrassed. I was only serving lunch and fetching ingredients while they were out there fighting for their lives. Pretty much my worst predictions came true, and I feel so sorry for him. Once the cheers die down a bit and everyone gets settled, Regara continues with her story. With Ranok's help, we repel the final assault and we're ready to pursue the escaping few wolves we didn't cut down. That's when their leader finally revealed himself. He was oddly confident and smug, asking us for terms, while waving a piece of paper in the air as if it were his shield. I would have none of it, she states with all the disgust she could muster. Ranok wanted to hear him out, and I don't blame him. But he didn't see what those wolves did to the burrow. No, that bastard was my quarry. I would have my revenge for all the suffering he inflicted upon our land, so I challenged him to a duel instead. Despite him asking for terms? Dran snarls in outrage, but again, he and Aldris seem to be the only ones playing the devil's advocate. I cared not for his terms. He was dead meat to me. Regara spits on the ground, and unsurprisingly, the vast majority of the gathered cheer for her. I said to him, if he defeats me, my blood debt dies with me, and he can parley with whomever he pleases. But if he wants to parley, it would be over my dead body. Many wolves rise up to their feet and begin applauding, to the utter horror of the elders. The entire field fills with ovations that don't seem to die out, and eventually the chief is forced to get up and settle them down with gentle waving of his paws. I'm impressed you decided to take him on, despite being exhausted after an entire week of fighting. Vitri mutters in approval, as his friend takes back his seat. I was hoping he'd thought the same and see me as an easy win. The fool accepted. Well, you were on your last legs. The chief smirks in amusement, and Regara shakes her head in jest. You have no idea, Chief, what a glorious second wind burning hatred can be. Actually, I can, and I applaud you for your valor. The chief bows his head towards her, causing Dran to stand up and growl. Glorifying mindless violence. Glorifying bravery, actually, but I understand the distinction might be lost on cowards. Dran's about to rush the table, but Aldris pulls him back into his seat. What happened next? She demands. This time, she's the one oddly invested in the following events, rubbing her paws in clear frustration. Everyone probably expected some spectacular duel, but in truth, all I did was deflect his first swing and crack his skull open like a soft-boiled egg. Regara splays her paws pitifully in clear disappointment, but the account is much to the crowd's content, and the gathered cheer and laugh once more. As he fell to the ground, his brains splattered all over the forest floor. I was able to calm down enough to recognize him. He was my intended. The female shrugs, with many muttering between each other in far-off tables. I haven't seen that twerp in 10 years, but I would recognize him anywhere. He had a growth spurt, that's for sure, leading the pack as if he were born into it. I guess I became the end of his military and political career. She scoffs mockingly, reaching towards a pouch on her belt and removing from it a crumpled envelope. That's the paper he was waving. The female brings it over to the table and passes it to the chief. I watch intently as he hesitantly opens it, removing from it a rather nice-looking parchment with a wax seal at the very bottom. That's a gallet from Galderin signed by Vortigern himself. He exhales in surprise, passing it over to Vitrir. To whom it may concern. The brown wolf reads out loud with bemusement. The bearer of this letter is entitled... He nods in surprise. To all accommodations, protections, and assistance befitting his lineage, Lord. Signed, Vortigern, by the grace of Aluna, Chief of Galderin, Lord of the Northern Pass, and Protector of the Silovan folk. He recounts the titles with an exasperated sigh, while the gathered begin to chatter in quite a confusion. Quite a protector indeed. Why don't you style yourself like that, by the grace of Aluna and all that rubbish? Vittori throws mockingly at his friend, to which he only snickers. Might be because I'm not an insecure prick. But think about it, you could be the chief of Turnen, lord of here and there and protector of the feasting table. The brown male continues his joke to the growing amusement of the gathered. Then again, it would make introductions a rather tenuous affair. Are you two done playing jesters? Aldris finally interrupts this, standing up and approaching the table. That foolish girl just admitted to killing an envoy from another chief, her intended nonetheless, and yet you sit here and mess around. She snatches the document from Vithri's paws and begins to read it intently, while Regara shrugs. What else was I supposed to do? Kiss him and show him the way to the next burrow? The large female draws a fit of laughter from the gathered. The fucker's attacked me. He thought he was good enough to take me down, and now his cracked skull decorates the northern border. I think we've accommodated him perfectly. Vithri quips again, and the gathered chuckle. Don't you think this could cause a reprisal? The pudgy female ignores Vithri completely and waves the document in front of the chief's bemused muzzle. Oh, I would love for Vortigern to inquire about his missing diplomatic mission. In person, I bet. This is serious! I'm sorry, am I missing something here? Those were foreign wolves invading our land, desecrating our forest. Isn't that what our patrol duty is meant to prevent? Has our world changed from wardens to wards while I was away? Typical brutish mindset! Aldris shoves the paper back into the chief's paws, marching back to her seat. Fine. Next time I'm out in the field, I will take a picnic basket just in case we stumble against another foray. We should serve them refreshments. Invading's a thirsty job after all. Another round of cheer fills the grounds, to Aldris' dismay, while Dran stands up, shaking his head in disbelief. No, this makes no sense! No sense at all! Why would Vortigern send ruffians to attack our burrows, and then arm them with letters of safe conduct? Perhaps he wants to send a message. Vithri responds seriously, previous tone of mockery gone from his voice. To whom? To us, or our subjects. The chief shrugs, crumbling the letter and tossing it aside. I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. This demands satisfaction. Satisfaction? You sound as bloodthirsty as that mad girl. She said herself that she killed an entire pack while we suffered no losses. We lost a whole burrow along with a druid ally. Regara corrects the angry female with a bitter tone. You know damn well those other kin don't count. I know no such thing. As an alpha, I swore to the moon herself to protect all denizens of Turnen. I notice a subdued smile appearing on Enel's otherwise peaceful muzzle, but quickly shudder in surprise as Ranok stands up. Hear, hear! He raises his mug, causing quite a few others to do the same, and I smile at my wolf. Our kin should come first! Be it as it may, we cannot allow a ruin of a burrow to be left unanswered. The chief leans uncomfortably, shaking his head in annoyance and forcing Ranok to sit down again. Do you want to start a war with our northern brethren over some bunnies? You haven't been there. The smell of burnt flesh carried on the wind. The charred skeletons of centennial trees. This wasn't just a raid. This was evil, pure and simple. Yes, war is horrible, girl. What other insights have you to offer? Aldris snaps dismissively and looks to the chief. Things like this happen. They always happen. The Sullivan folk are under our protection. What is that protection worth when others can undermine it with impunity? I think that first, we need to try and resolve this diplomatically. Perhaps it's all just a misunderstanding. Dran proposes nervously. It's clear he's starting to take it slightly more seriously than Aldris does. I think I understand quite well that our lives were on the line when, for 5 nights straight, we were hounded by the enemy. Perhaps Gildarin had a harsh winter? The pudgy female proposes in a desperate attempt to explain this away. I mean, 3 times in a row, our own supplies ran short. Maybe Vortigern seeks aid to replenish his granaries. I would hardly hold on par an armed robbery and murder with our neighbor asking to borrow some turnips. Vithri mocks her again, and once again Aldris is exposed to ridicule from the gathered. Seeing this, Dran feels compelled to rush to her defense, challenging the entire central table. You hot bloods are all the same. No, you hot bloods are all the same, clamoring for combat wherever you can. This dumb bitch might have just as well started a war, yet you applaud her for it? I blink, as do many others, all of us looking intently at Regara, whose entire form tenses as she grips her hammer tightly. When you've truly been to battle. I've just been to a battle, you pathetic den warmer! She snarls viciously, causing the old male to stumble over his stool. You spent your entire life hiding behind your desk and quill, or underneath this bitch's skirt. If you ever speak to me this way again, I'll demand satisfaction in the ring. It's twice now, Dran, that you've invoked another tribe wolf's wrath. For a diplomat, your people skills are somewhat lacking. I guess like everything, that too went away with age. An awkward silence falls on the gathered, but Vithri quickly breaks it with another quip. Perhaps he just practices this new brand of diplomacy Vortigern meddles with. He draws a reluctant chuckle from some of the wolves, while Aldris looks to her defeated friend with worry. What of Dalaran? Where is he now? We couldn't look for him. There were too many wounded among us, and we had to bring them back home. So you just left him out there, alone? Dran calls out in shock, but Regara only shrugs. Ranok couldn't leave us without an escort, in case more wolves were hiding within our woods. Besides, in that last report I had from the druid, Dalaran's pack was headed to another burrow to leave the refugees there. He's our most experienced alpha. I'm sure that once his business is concluded, he will return to us as hastily as possible. He better does. The fat male grumbles as if it were a threat. Trusting a word of an otherkin. Aldris sneers, joining his discontent and causing an outburst of chatter among the tables. The chief stands up and repeatedly clangs his cup like a gavel, to simmer everyone down. Well, there you have it. I think it's clear that we have to invoke a howl. Some of the wolves nod in agreement, but Aldris quickly puts an end to it with another shouting spree. A howl? This is absurd! Weren't you threatening me with one just the other day? He scoffs at her mockingly. If you send the word out to the other wolves, it is bound to be picked up by the neighboring tribes. It will raise questions. Good! It'll make the others think twice before violating our borders. Vithri snickers, pouring himself some more wine. I warn you, Varrock, you're... Not interested in your counsel, I'm afraid. Nor your warnings, for that matter. He shrugs, regarding the gathered at our table. All I need is the support of the alphas, and consent of one of the elders to summon the howl. And I will get there. I will not leave our people paralyzed with inaction by your intrigues. If you go against us, I promise you that your position... I don't give a damn about my position as well. He states plainly in a risen voice, rolling his eyes in annoyance and causing a majority of the gathered to gasp. Depose me for all it matters. Who will you replace me with? There's not a wolf anywhere in this forest, even if you turn every damn stone, that would stand a better chance at contesting me than Vithrier. He points to his friend, who at first is slightly surprised to be pulled into this argument, but his humor quickly returns. And I'll gladly trade places with him. He does half of the ruling for me anyway. You could be my advisor for a change. The brown wolf proposes cheekily, and many chuckle at the remark. I would gladly accept it, my friend, just to see the look on their dumb muzzles. I'm sure it would make this little switcheroo worth their time. How dare you mock us like this? Dran growls in anger, but the chief only laughs. Mock? I'm just stating the fact here. Who do you plan to replace me with? Vithri has more popular support than any of your imaginary candidates could ever have. The two cunts exchange surprised looks. It would seem that they have found themselves at yet another impasse, and I must admit, I enjoy seeing their bewildered expressions as they sit there on those undersized stools like naughty children in timeout. The chief, on the other hand, takes his adult-sized seat with satisfaction, clinging his cup with Vithrier in a triumphant toast. I suggest we let the emotions settle down before we discuss the vote further. Perhaps you should go and eat something, or have a drink. I'm sure that shouting did a number on their throat. Amen to that. I mutter quietly under my breath, reaching for my cup to take a sip and causing Ranok to chuckle. I watch as Aldris squeezes her fist in annoyance, but otherwise doesn't move. Well, we will remain where we are. Suit yourself. The chief shrugs and the table returns to idle chatter while I finally nibble on my food. My appetite kinda went away with Regara's story, but at the same time, I'm quite hungry. Despite how terrible it all have sounded, both she and Ranok look quite normal, merely joking with friends and enjoying their meals as if nothing happened. Perhaps it's because they were prepared for something like this their entire life, but something tells me they're just repressing their emotions in the most unhealthy of fashion. We stay like this for some time, with the elders watching as our revelry continues. There's an obvious celebratory mood, with Regara being almost like a guest of honor. From time to time, different wolves come by our table to clink their chalices with the towering female and pat her approvingly on the back. No wonder, she became an instant celebrity with her story. But the congratulating isn't just limited to her. Many cheer Ranok as a savior of a sister pack. I look with pride as my wolf receives all the praise he rightfully deserves, even though he feels rather awkward about it. It's nice to have the dinner shift to this lighter mood. Eventually, Cora shows up, rushing towards the table with a troubled expression. I'm sorry for being late. One of the young ones was teething and had trouble falling asleep. Hello, love. I've heard from V about the ordeal. Terribly sorry about all that. She scratches Ranok's chin and then nods tiredly towards Regara. But you both are safe and sound. That's all that matters. I could hear a gasp escape Ranok's throat as Cora lands merrily inside her lap, brushing her back against my shoulder. What is she doing here? Aldris sneers, looking at the girl with a powerful disdain and clearly reliving our morning spat. I'm here to keep our returning hero some company and congratulate him on a job well done. The 20 female responds, nuzzling Ranok's cheek softly, and I struggle not to get jealous again. And you will allow her at the table, but not us? Technically, she's not sitting at the table. She's not even seated on the bench. The chief shrugs, sneaking satisfied glances at his boy. She is sitting on some wood, though, that's for sure. Vittori pipes up, raising his cup and causing the gather to burst into laughter. The only ones not sharing in the amusement at this classy joke are the elders, and the couple in question. Fuck me, if they had to endure this on a regular basis, no wonder they decided to comply with the charade. I sit next to them quietly, trying not to be jealous. This time, it's much easier, not only because I like Cora, but also because I know it's not something either of them wants to do, to begin with. Not to mention, every now and then, Cora leans back with her entire body, stretching like a cat, so that she could reach my head and scratch it. It's pleasant, but at the same time gives me a front view of her cleavage, and puts her entire torso on display like a smorgasbord for Ranok to drool over. He might not want to, but I clearly see he's getting somewhat flustered, and how can I blame him? I'm also getting flushed. The way she bends her slender body does something to me on a fundamental level. How could this not entice other males? What is wrong with this tribe that a catch like this must parade herself with a flashy lure like Ranok to draw attention? None of what those wolves do makes any damn sense. I just close my eyes and lose myself in her occasional scratches. But as the time passes, Cora gets more and more frisky, with her paws going up and down Ranok's torso. It almost looks as if she upped the game of getting me jealous. Or maybe I'm just taking it too personally. But one thing is sure, they, or at least she, is going fully at it, as Ranok gets extremely worked up to the point that even the elders notice. Shouldn't they get a room? A rather shameless display. Puppy love, what can they do? Not like the two of you would know anything about it. Almost as if emboldened by her father, Cora giggles so theatrically that it sounds comical. Worst yet, Tano gives me those self-satisfied smirks, and again I'm getting incredibly frustrated. I watch with surprise and grow angry as she takes hold of Ranok's muzzle and dove towards his ear, whispering some sweet nothings, and then she nibbles on it, causing Ranok to go utterly red with embarrassment. Is she fucking drunk? Alright, break it up, you two. The chief finally interrupts this, but he does so in a teasing manner, almost taking deep satisfaction from the spectacle. Ranok only stands up, petrified, helping the female to get to her own feet. See you later, handsome. She blows him a kiss, and he slaps her buttocks methodically, allowing her to skip away to her own table. Something's off, though. At first, I thought she simply took the game too far, but Ranok's expression shows he's more concerned than turned on, despite the clearly visible bulge in his crotch. I need to take a leak. He mumbles awkwardly, looking to his father, who waves his paw at him to give leave. Sure you do. Victory teases, drawing an amused snort from the chief, who waves his paw at his son. Come. Ranok nods begrudgingly and throws in my direction. I get up slightly confused, only to freeze still as the chief looks in my direction. Whatever you need him for. The wolf pauses, looking back at them absent-mindedly. I pissed on my Gabasum once. I need him to hold it back for me. The chief and Vithrir exchange confused looks, but then shrug and return to the matter at hand, while I follow the wolf behind one of the screens. Ranok leads me quite a while without saying a word, but once we're far enough, I finally blurt out in half-jest. So, you sure Cora's not into you? The wolf doesn't regard me. In fact, he increases its pace. Cora said someone was going through our house. Wait, what? I blink, coming to a stop. She couldn't say it in the open, so she needed a reason to whisper it to me. You mean all that groping was just for show? Fuck, why am I so easily riled up? Of course, she wouldn't lie about not being into Ranok. Why am I even focusing on this nonsense when I just been told that we were burgled? Did she know who it was? No, she didn't. And she was rather afraid to check. If they're bold enough to raid my house, who knows what they would do to her? Do you think it's the elders, one of their goons? Might be. He shrugs worriedly, pacing in small circles. Fuck, I never heard of anything like this. Like what? Someone breaking into your home. It just doesn't happen. Really? I scoff in slight disbelief. It's not like they have set up here their little paradise lost. Yes, really. We're a tight, knit community, I know. I sigh teasingly, looking at him with a gentle smile. I mean, there isn't anything at your house that is incriminating. I say with confidence, which slowly fades away. Is there? There's no additional bedding for one. Could be that you make me sleep on the floor? He gives me a pretty condescending look, as if I said something stupid. What? I'm not Dran. I have a reputation of a soft paw. A soft paw? A wolf who's extremely lenient with his wards. Trist never slept rough. I ponder for a moment and snap my fingers. I make up my bedding every day and put it away. I mean, why wouldn't I? The cottage is small. I guess. He sounds unconvinced, but my mind drifts to another matter entirely. There wasn't anything precious at the cottage, right? Like, you weren't robbed just now, were you? No, I have all my valuables on me, and you're here, so even if the cottage burned down, nothing important would be lost. I smile involuntarily as he continues to betray his concern for me at every moment. Well then, nothing to worry about, right? Someone just came in, looked around for some dirt, and left with nothing. He mutters, really upset by the whole debacle. Feels strange to know someone was in your house while you were away, you know? I was in your house while you were away. I tease, but he doesn't take the bait. Uninvited, I mean. Sorry, I was trying to lighten the mood. You've been through so much already that this is the last thing that you need right now. I place a hand on his shoulder. But I know what you mean. It makes you feel vulnerable and almost violated. I bet those old-timers were behind it. Father warned me they were storing trouble. Them, and quite a few others. But I'm not about to say that out loud. He's got enough on his plate. We have to make a sweep of the ground once we head back. Mm-hmm. I nod in agreement as we make our way back towards the grounds when I remember our excuse from the table. Wait, shouldn't you take a leak at least? What? Why? So they can smell that you've actually done it? Don't be ridiculous. No one's going to be sniffing out for my piss. He snorts in bemusement, and I simply shrug. As you say. The wolf notices my confusion and decides to indulge me. We have a keen sense of smell, true, but that leads to information overload. Most of the time, our mind blocks off unnecessary information. It's only when we focus on a scent when we can harness the detail. Huh. I sound slightly confused, and he laughs. In other words, if you're not sniffing for something, or, more importantly, don't know what you're sniffing for, you won't smell it. I narrow my brow at his obvious tone. How should I know how their senses work? But I guess it's a good piece of information to hold on to. And considering I've just done the laundry, I don't think the intruder would sniff anything of significance relating to me, so I sigh in relief. Once we arrive back at the table, the conversation about Regara's pack continues in earnest. I notice Vol is listening intently, with Enel leaned over onto his shoulder, sleeping. It's actually quite cute how the black male seems not to mind her one bit. I wonder if she's faking it again. So, how many wolves in total did you get? With Dalaran's 4, 11. Only 3 escaped. So you decimated 2 neighboring packs. Dran pitches in with a scolding tone in his voice. Again, wouldn't have to do any decimating if they weren't here to begin with. The female states sternly, and many nod in agreement, including Ranok, as we take our seats. Besides... She pauses, reluctant to proceed, but the chief encourages her. What is it? I don't want to sound crazy, but they didn't seem like to be packs at all. What do you mean? The male tilts his head in confusion as the female tries to collect her thoughts. They didn't have rangers with them, scouts, nor any typical pack structure. Just regular warriors, some quite heavily armed. Heavily armed? Fully plated, in fact. The walking tin wolves seem to be of foreign extraction. A foreign extraction? What are you trying to say, girl? The pudgy elder throws in impatiently. They weren't Avalon wolves. Their language sounded funny. You mean to say that Vortigern brought in wolves from across the sea? She shrugs awkwardly. Again, not claiming to be an expert on the matter, but that's what it looked like to me. If Vortigern is making overtures towards the Wolven Horde, this is indeed troubling. And would explain his underhanded use of diplomatic immunity. The chief scoffs in the direction of the crumbled piece of paper, which lies where it landed. So, he hired a group of mercenaries. What of it? Aldris sneers, crossing her arms and leaning back in her seat like a petulant child. And what if those aren't just mercenaries? What if he brought his experts to train his wolves in the art of warfare? What if he's reorganizing his tribe into a proper army? Are you suggesting our army is not proper? The female raises her voice, intentionally drawing the attention from the neighboring tables and stirring murmurs amongst the gathered. With the stakes this high, it's not like others were ignoring the conversation up to this point, but this little stunt made them pay attention twofold. The chief takes note of that and takes a deep breath, weighing his words carefully. I'm suggesting that we've been following an outdated dogma that prevented progress. Our troops are more suited for guerrilla warfare, limited to the woods alone. We don't stand a chance facing a regular army. Not like the one wolves fields across the sea. We stood against Tigeron when you weren't even born. I lived through it. Aldris states proudly, pushing her sausage-like fingers deep into her chest. But the chief remains silent, taking a moment to stand up. Aye, and I've heard that story many times, just as any other wolf did. All 6 tribes united, tens of thousands of wolves lost to a single battle mage with barely a handful of troops at his command. He takes a deep gulp from his chalice. It wasn't a war. It was a joke. Tigeron didn't even bother to send in their real army. Our ancestors fought valiantly. The female snarls, stomping in anger, again trying to make a spectacle so that everyone pays careful attention to what's being said. The feasting ground goes quiet like a graveyard, more than 100 wolves seated, and you could hear a pin drop. The chief takes another deep breath and smiles at the enticing female. Aye, they fought valiantly. They fought bravely, and the tigers made a picnic on their graves. If Vortigern is mobilizing, it means he's making plans much bigger than just a border skirmish. What's worse, this is not going to look mighty well in the capital. The Sorcerer King is not going to take lightly to one of their own treating with the Wolven Horde just as their war was concluded. Vitri leans in, refilling his friend's cup. Those damn dire wolves are trying to open a backdoor to Tigeron and use us as their cannon fodder. You may dislike me all you like, Aldris, but even you must see where this is headed. We retained our sovereignty at the Sorcerer King's whim. We preserved it by blood and steel. She shouts out, but this time the chief has had enough. At the Sorcerer King's whim! He roars, slamming his goblet against the table and sending wine cascading every which way. Everyone's frozen in place as his rattled breath echoes across the grounds until Vitri places a paw on his friend's shoulder and brings him down to his seat. He calmly replenishes Varroc's cup again and gives the old female an aggravated look. We're just a pen stroke away from losing everything we own. You do understand that, right? Of course she doesn't. She's never been outside of the moon-damned forest. The chief sneers through his clenched teeth. Yes, but he was. Vitri nods to Dran. You've been, yes, mamming her drivel your entire life. Perhaps now it's time you grow a pair and speak some sense into that woman. Aldris snarls at the brown male, while Dran fidgets nervously. You've been out there in the real world. Tell her where we do feature on every map. The old male tries to gather his courage, but falters until the female gives him a penetrating look. He's right. As far as everyone's concerned, we're part of Tigeron. So you see, we're here, left to our own devices because the tigers don't care. At first, it seems that they're finally getting through to her, as she listens intently to what the chief has to say. I need you to understand how much important it is that they continue to not care. Because if we make them care, then everything your precious ancestors ever worked for, everything you've ever claimed to strive for, will become undone within the blink of an eye. Be they mercenaries or advisors, if Vortigern invited wolves from Euron to his court, it'll be seen as an insult to the capital. But all her calm is an illusion. It appears that she was simply waiting for another slip of the tongue to get hanged over. I see that the time that you spent with the tigers rubbed off on you to call the Tigiri city in such a manner. It is the capital, whether you like it or not. The heart of Avalon beats in Tigeron. The chief snorts, as if he was addressing a naive pup. The Lynxian, the Panthori, and the Ankari and Filian all pledged their allegiance to the alliance of the Tigeron. Even the damn Huskies and the human Jarladums cooperate with them. Vitri reinforces the point, counting all the different species on his fingers. If Vortigern starts something foolish, he will have the entire continent on our head. Yes, not the first time I've heard a doomsayer spin his tale. But as always, Aldris is not receptive. How would a single tribe start a war with Tigeron? It wouldn't. The chief shrugs, catching her by surprise and drawing everyone's attention back to the exchange. Vortigern is smart, ambitious, and above all, patient. Never liked the Git. Always been a grubby wolf. He's more of your persuasion. He nods to the pudgy female. Always struck me as a petty little schemer. But we ought to give credit where credit's due. He always got what he wanted, one way or another. Not unlike your friend over there and his father before him. Even their methods seem mightily similar. Aldris deflects, and a slight gasp could be heard from among the gathered. Vitri looks at his friend, worried, as the chief's lips curl up to reveal his fangs, but no outburst comes forth. Even Ranok is clearly unsettled, and it seems that the comment holds a deeper meaning that is completely lost on me. Be as it may, it is clear that the throne of Gilderin was not the end of Vortigern's ambitions. The Bearwulff seized the opportunity to return the conversation on track. If he's probing our borders, it seems he's getting ready to make his bid. A bid for what? For Turnin. And not just our tribe, but the entire damn forest, from Alwyn all the way to Arden. He states plainly, taking a shallow sip and drawing a few murmurs from the surrounding tables. Aldris takes a careful look over the gathered and simply laughs it off. This is absurd. The Wolven Horde just concluded a very costly and humiliating peace with the Emperor of Lyoness, the Golden Mane Kingdom, and the Alliance of Tigeron. Why would they waste their resources now on a backwater on the other side of the world? He poses a rhetorical question, and when Aldris could not provide an answer, the chief simply picks up for her. Indeed. They must have assurances, and the only enticing enough I could imagine is the unification of our people under their banner to create another front in their enemy's backyard. This is all nonsense! The pudgy female exhales in amusement, shaking her head. You two are drunk with power and high on epic tales of old. She speaks mockingly, using her stool almost like a stage for her oratory skills. You talk as if our brothers from across the sea planned a worldwide conflict. What was the last one but a world war? Vitri proposes another question, this time without any levity in his voice. From the deserts of Kemet through Persin and Ros Mosovery all the way up to the Ursa Highlands. They engulfed all 3 continents in their war, not once, but 3 times over, and that's just in the last century alone. He emphasizes with a slightly risen voice. If you act like a mad dog, you'll be treated like one, and I'm no brothers with the savagest beasts about to be put down. The so-called Wolven Horde has managed to unite every single other kin in this world against them. They've given canines a bad name. The chief recounts. Not only that, they've abandoned Aluna herself. They've burned down their sacred groves and turned to their perverse magics. He adds with no hidden disgust in his voice. If half of what the other kin say about them is true. He pauses, clearly struggling to understand Aldris' point of view. How is it that their sudden involvement with our northern neighbors does not unsettle you? All of this is just hearsay based on the words of this pup. Aldris tries to sound confident, but it's clear her composure is wavering. As usual, when running out of arguments, she retorts to the dumbest of insults. Regara is thrice her size. She's no pup. And the irony doesn't seem to be lost on Vitri and the chief. She's the daughter of the best smith this side of the woods. If she says that they wore foreign steel, I'm willing to bet my life on it. We really need to convey a howl and pray this isn't too late. The chief waves his paw dismissively, clearly losing patience with his quibbling. Dran. He addresses the old male with almost a pleading expression. For the first time, I see the old wolf clearly torn and almost unsettled, casting nervous gazes between his defiant companion and the chief. Your only son is out there, fighting moon knows what odds. Surely you don't mean to leave his hardships unanswered. I would. He tries to muster the courage to speak, but the vile woman cuts him off. Dran knows his place in the tribe, and so does Delaran. We're not swayed by petty sentiments, unlike the two of you. To us, the good of the tribe is of paramount importance. Which tribe, I would wonder? Vitri mutters in a harsh, cold tone, taking a sip of wine, while the female can barely collect herself. But it doesn't take long for her to blow a gasket and start howling like a mad bitch she is. How dare you! I gave my entire life for our people! Unsuccessfully, obviously. Some tried much harder at your behest. The entire forest is filled with name trees of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. So don't you dare tell me what you gave up for the tribe. The brown male sneers, but the chief has clearly had enough, and once again waves his paw impatiently. I'd say we're getting nowhere here. I'll give you two a moment to discuss this amongst yourselves, but come midnight, we shall vote whether or not to invoke a howl. He rises from his seat and everyone gets up, apart from Vol, who tries to nudge Anel from her sleep. No, don't. Let her rest. The wreath won't fall from my head just because you're seated. Come, I want to talk with you. The old male looks back to my wolf and nods in the direction of the forest. Ranok helps me to my feet, but the chief sneers in annoyance. Let the damn monkey be. Nothing is going to happen to him in the span of a few moments. The grey wolf looks at me with worry, but I shrug at him with a reassuring smile. I'm gonna be just fine. Whatever's going on is much more important. With the chief and Ranok taking their leave, everyone slowly disperses, and the grounds resemble what I've seen the first time around, with different wolves mingling and chatting. And there's plenty to chat about, that's for sure. I take idle sips of wine, discreetly paying attention to what's being said at the nearby tables. Everyone's very much on edge and concerned that a war might be coming, but whom they would fight seems as confusing to them as it is to me. The common theme seems to be reluctance to openly battle with their own kin, although very few appear willing to forego transgressions committed by their northern neighbors. The elders also took notice of the conversations and decided to take rounds between the various tables, talking to prominent tribeswolves, with the aim to most likely sway their opinions. Somewhere in the commotion, Vitri disappeared, most likely to find his daughter and to ensure that she's out of harm's way, fearing another spat with the elders. I really hate those old farts. Their behavior leaves very little doubt about how rotten they truly are. And before long, I have another proof, almost as if the universe tried to mock me. Aldris, the fat bitch, begins storming towards the table, clearly stomping in my direction. She pushes her mug in my face while poking Anal harshly in the shoulder, stirring the old female from another one of her naps. Do you intend to simply vegetate here? Maybe you'd join the discussion. It's worded more like a demand than a suggestion, and I frown, leaning slightly to the side as the cup is still very much in my face. Oh, no. I think I had enough excitement for one night. I'll just stay where I am. Thank you. Ugh, what was the point of even dragging you here? Aldris sneers and looks to me with anger. She pivots around the table and grabs my wrist, shaking me to and fro. Whine, you damn moron! I haven't got all night! At first, I'm startled, but my anger finally kicks in and I decide that then and there not to dance to her tune ever again. I simply sit, looking at her with a puzzled expression. I'm a dumb ape after all. That human has all the makings of an idiot! But my little gambit is about to turn sour as the female loses her patience and lifts her arm with a clear intent to hit me. I'll teach you some obedience! What are you doing? Regara arrives in the nick of time, calling out in both shock and in anger and causing the elder female to reconsider. You would strike a guest at the dinner table? Her voice carries an oddly serious tone. Even Enel is quite surprised. Surely you wouldn't. The frail female adds in a worried tone. Why, violating hospitality rights is a serious crime. It would even make your father roll in his grave. He's not a guest! Aldris protests through a growl, but the towering female does not let up and moves in closer to square off with the vile woman. The chief declared him so, and as far as I'm aware, his word is the law. All the damn bunnies have bolted somewhere. How else am I supposed to get a refill? As she says so, I cast my gaze around, and true to her sentiment, there is no attendant to be seen in sight. I guess they use this recess to talk amongst themselves after all the issues relates to them as much as it does to the wolves. You're not a cripple. Fetch your own damn wine. I managed just fine, and I've just returned from a battle. With barely a scrape. Still more than you've ever experienced. Listen here, you've overgrown bitch. Fuck, I can't believe Granny is missing all of this. The Black Wolf throws in indifferently, taking a prolonged and very slurpy sip of his ale. She always loved good gossip. Bringing her up to speed about this circus should prove entertaining. And again, as if it were a magic spell, the sheer mention of her sister causes Aldris to fall silent, and the female fidgets uncomfortably. Who's your granny? Pray tell. You look mighty familiar. Enel gives Vol a careful look, almost as if she saw him for the first time. She's your friend, Enel. My friend? Oh, what joyous news! The frail female clasps her paws in pure bliss. I thought all my friends were long gone. Fortunately, not all of them. It's just the shits that stick around and stink up the place. The comment clearly annoys Aldris, and I can tell by the tightening grip on my arm, and I groan in pain. This is going to leave another mark. If the monkey won't serve, pass me the bottle at the very least! The pudgy female throws demanding at Vol, and the wolf scoffs. Fuck no, I'm not your damn waiter. This is our wine, you can fetch your drink from the common tables. Enraged, Aldris lets go of my arm and shoves it away, pointing her sausage-like fingers at the towering female. Now listen here, and listen well. You can have my cup, dearie. Enel interjects, offering the chalice to the nasty bitch, in her shaky paws. Should save you the trouble. Aldris veers around the table and snatches the cup with a subdued growl, storming off and grumbling under her breath. Bunch of soft wolves infatuated with a stunted mongrel. You're welcome. The frail female mutters, and I sigh heavily, really thankful to be surrounded with kind and assertive wolves who look out for me. I get up from my spot and go behind the pavilion. There, as I suspected, I find a side cupboard from which I fetch one of the clean cups. When I return to the table, I nod for the wine bottle, which is slightly out of my reach, and Regara gives it to me with a smile. I fill up a replacement cup for Enel and pass it to her. She takes it with a gentle nod and a gentle smile, but before she can say a thing, I hear Aldris, angered, shouting from afar. Had it been a wolf, one would have thought it's doing it on purpose. The female snarls in my direction, and I snort discreetly, shrugging it off and returning to my spot. Now that there's only us at the table, I take a discreet glance at Tano, who's been quiet through the entire feast so far. Not sure if he's fuming over a surrendered seat, or simply hatching another plan to torment me. He seems very focused and agitated, as he's mostly playing with his knife, chiseling something nervously into the side of the table. He's oddly quiet for his usual self, but my attention is quickly drawn to the overgrown female. Despite Enel softly snoozing again between them, Regara takes this opportunity to lean towards the Black Wolf. So, since I no longer have a mate, I guess this means I'm back on the market. Vol, how about you and me, you handsome beast? Our pups would be hulking monsters who could conquer the world. She winks at him, causing the male to fluster. Vol is really cute when he can't handle his own flavor of advances. What an appealing prospect. He mutters uncomfortably and stands up, nudging Enel to rest herself against Regara's shoulder instead. I'll better go and fetch Farissa. She'll be needed for the vote. And off he goes, bolting with his tail tucked between his legs, causing me to chuckle. What a coward. If you dish it out, you should be able to take it. I shake my head in amusement and simply continue nibbling on my dinner, washing it down from time to time with wine. In truth, I prefer this over the ale, especially since this vintage is actually quite sweet, almost like boozy grape juice, none of that vinegary taste at all, which I normally associate with wines. But my idle enjoyment quickly comes to an end, as with the Black Wolf gone, the White One sweeps into action. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it for today. If it isn't obvious, I'm recording the outros and intros for these episodes after the fact because I'm pretty much going through the whole recording of chapter 7 and then cutting it up and then making the intros and outros. But anyways, yeah. So that was a lot to unpack, I guess, again. And we got to hear from Regara about what happened with, those 2 weeks that Ranok was gone. And actually, would that be leading up to Ranok being gone? Anyways, but yeah. So obviously something is going on with the neighboring tribes next to this one, and there appears to be a war brewing. And personally, I feel that the chief is justified in trying to call the Howl in order to basically prepare themselves for what might happen. But obviously the elders want to be in control, or at the very least Aldris does, because Dran kind of looks a little conflicted. Like, he might be seeing reason for once, but because he's basically Aldris's shadow, he, I guess, doesn't feel capable to voice his concerns. Or at least his, growing concern that perhaps what's happening is more serious than, they think. But yeah. Also, Ranok seems to be a bit skittish, or not skittish, like adverse to receiving praise because of what he, did. And he's supposed to be like the hero of this story. But apparently he feels differently about it. And I know why. And yeah. Also, what's up with Tano? Why is he acting all Is it because we're being, purposefully dense in front of Aldris, but we're, being very attentive to Enel? And yeah. Also, it's very funny to hear the female wolf hit on Vulgar, and he's just like, oh god, no, please stop. I mean, we know it's because he likes Verissa, but it's also funny because that's probably the way he is with Verissa. So it's funny. But anyways, yeah. What do you guys think Tano is going to tell him, the human? And also, it's concerning that somebody decided to break into Ranok's house, before I forget, because that was also a very important plot point, and we can't, ignore that. So, who broke in? What does Tano want? What's gonna happen with the Howl? Is it gonna be called or what? Those are all questions that are gonna have to be answered, perhaps in the next episode, or in the next chapter. Anyways, thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Far Beyond the World yourself, you can find it over on itch. If you would like to support the project, there will be a link down for their Patreon. If you would like to follow Kael Tiger for updates of Far Beyond the World, there will be a link down for that. And perhaps there might also be a link for their Discord where you can get like quicker updates on what's happening with Far Beyond the World. And I really suggest that you try to find the Discord because it'll also have the direct link for the itch page, just in case you can't find it. But yeah. And as always, I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.